The desert air outside Creech Air Force Base was dry and still when Senior Airman Brandon Bryant stepped into the dimly lit ground control station. It was October 2007, and Bryant, then just 21, had logged over 1,500 flight hours behind the controls of NQ-1 Predator drones. The mission briefing was delivered in low, deliberate tones. Target confirmed. Signals intelligence suggests a high-value militant figure. Eyes on. Await green light. Thousands of miles away, in a mud-brick compound in rural Afghanistan, a suspected insurgent stepped outside his house. He had no idea he was being watched with microscopic precision from a bunker in Nevada. Inside the control room, Bryant's screen showed thermal silhouettes, abstract heat signatures walking through their evening routine. 4:40, he and the pilot tracked the man. He saw him step outside, talk to someone, return indoors. Then the command came through. Permission granted. Fire when ready. Bryant armed the missile, steadying his hands on the joystick. The pilot issued a quiet countdown. 3, 2, 1. A Hellfire missile detached from the wing of the Predator drone, sped through the cold Afghan night, and struck the compound seconds later. On screen, the infrared image flared white. When the dust settled, Bryant later recalled seeing what looked like a figure crawling toward doorway, before stopping, fading. He logged the strike, completed the kill confirmation procedure, and signed off. Back home later that night, he sat alone. For the first time, it hit him. He had taken a life without leaving U.S. soil. Bryant later stated in interviews and to the BBC that he felt physically sick. He estimated that during his years as a drone operator, over 1,600 people were targeted, some confirmed combatants, others uncertain due to fragmented intelligence. He reported that his first confirmed kill caused a moral injury, a psychological term describing trauma that arises from actions violating one's ethical beliefs. Despite U.S. drone operation procedures suggesting emotional detachment, he later admitted, "I felt the life leave their body through the thermal imagery. It marked a turning point." He would go on to serve 6 years in the drone program, but he would never sleep the same again. What Bryant witnessed in the months that followed, and what U.S. commanders required him to do, would redefine warfare and shatter his understanding of accountability. After the first confirmed kill in 2007, Brandon Bryant was pushed deeper into high-priority missions. Between 2008 and 2010, drone warfare expanded rapidly, fueled by intelligence breakthroughs and a growing reliance on unmanned aerial vehicles. Bryant worked up to 12-hour shifts, sometimes tracking individuals for days without sleep, coordinating with CIA and JSOC teams operating across legal jurisdictions. Inside the control container, he operated multiple screens, thermal imaging, targeting systems, encrypted chat with command teams, and overhead intelligence feeds. Commanders often referred to strike outputs in numbers and designations, not names. On paperwork, human lives were represented by EKI, enemy killed in action. Bryant later told Der Spiegel and The Guardian, "We were encouraged to be proud of our strike numbers. Killing remotely became routine. That was the point where I started losing myself." In 2009, Bryant was assigned to a prolonged surveillance mission over North Waziristan, Pakistan, a region targeted for suspected militant safe houses. For 5 days, he watched a compound where signals intelligence suggested a Taliban logistics facilitator was located. The target sometimes appeared with 2 young children. Bryant raised concerns that the intelligence was insufficient. He later described the reply from superiors as chilling. "It's not your job to decide if they're bad or not. Execute the mission." On the 6th day, when the target was alone, the strike was authorized. Bryant fired. Minutes after impact, he saw a child run into view toward the debris. The child collapsed near where the body of the target lay. The aftermath was unclear, but Bryant never forgot that image. He said, "We never got confirmation. That uncertainty stayed with me more than any confirmed target." Later in 2010, Bryant contributed surveillance support to precursor intelligence operations linked to Operation Neptune Spear, which would ultimately lead to the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. While not part of the final assault team, drone intelligence crews supported target monitoring in Pakistan. Bryant saw how drones became the eyes of U.S. counterterror efforts, precise but detached. Still, The system expected emotional neutrality. Drone operators were not considered combat veterans since they never physically entered the battlefield. Despite working missions where life and death were decided by quick keystrokes, Bryant went home daily like any office worker. He told BBC Panorama, "I'd go from watching a strike where someone died to sitting in traffic on my way home. There's no transition, no way to process it." As drone efficiency increased, human cost became obscured. Strike rhythm accelerated. Bryant counted 13 deaths in 1 week during a peak operation phase. What began as a mission of national defense slowly became a conflict with his own conscience. By 2010, Brandon Bryant was responsible for over 1,600 strike missions. He monitored targets sleeping, eating, playing with family. He learned their routines but was forbidden from knowing their names. Each confirmed hit required operators to submit reports with cold precision. He once described the numbers system simply. "You don't see people. You see heat signatures." But human reality breached the system. During one mission over Afghanistan, Bryant observed a man walking indoors moments before impact. Through thermal imagery, he believed he saw the man's leg detaching from his body after the strike. He later said in a German parliamentary testimony, "I watched him bleed out. I watched the life leave him. I had nightmares for weeks." Drone operators were expected to perform like machines. Their workweek could stretch to 50-plus hours, alternating between watching suspected militants and driving home to suburban routines. The contrast between warfare and daily civilian life destabilized many operators emotionally. Unlike traditional combat roles, there was no decompression period. In 2011, Bryant asked his commanding officer a simple question: "When do we know if we're killing the right people?" He later said the reply was, "You guys are saving American lives. Leave the rest to the analysts." But his doubts grew stronger. That same year, he was medically evaluated and found to be physically exhausted, sleep-deprived, and suffering psychological deterioration. His therapist told him, "Brandon, you're experiencing moral injury. What you did violated your inner moral code." In 2012, Bryant formally requested to leave drone operations. It took months before he was allowed to step away. By then, he reported that he felt dead inside. After leaving the Air Force with an honorable discharge, he expected some recognition for the mental toll. Instead, he was told drone operators did not qualify for combat stress benefits due to the remote nature of their role. This moment pushed him toward becoming a whistleblower. In 2013, Bryant spoke publicly for the first time in a major interview with Der Spiegel, a respected German publication known for investigative reporting. He described drone killing as like playing God without the right to be God. His testimony gained international attention, especially in Europe, where drone ethics were heavily debated. He continued to speak at public forums, including interviews with BBC Panorama and Democracy Now!, and gave testimony before the German parliament, Bundestag, in 2015. Bryant argued that drone strikes lacked transparency and that civilians were being harmed. He claimed that kill confirmation procedures sometimes relied on incomplete intelligence. What made his statement significant was that he was among the first former drone operators to publicly question the morality and legality of remote warfare, stating, "We removed ourselves from the battlefield physically, but not spiritually. Our bodies were at Creech. Our minds stayed with the dead." Despite backlash from some military figures, Bryant's disclosures contributed to increased scrutiny of drone strike protocols. Human rights groups and investigative journalists began probing deeper into civilian casualty data. His worldview was summarized in one haunting line he repeated in several interviews. "I learned that just because you can kill from far away doesn't mean you should." Brandon Bryant's public disclosures triggered an unprecedented wave of international concern, particularly across Europe. In October 2013, a widely covered Der Spiegel article titled "A Drone Pilot's Life: I Saw the Hellfire Kill a Man" ignited debate within German parliament. The Bundestag summoned Bryant and other former operators in December 2014 for formal testimony on the role of U.S. drone operations in counterterrorism missions, especially those conducted via the U.S. Air Base at Ramstein, Germany, which was allegedly used as a signal relay point. Bryant testified, "Germany is part of this system. Signals from our drones go through Ramstein. Without it, many of the strikes wouldn't happen. This allegation sparked a constitutional concern. Germany, bound by strict engagement laws following World War II, opened a parliamentary review, questioning whether they were unintentionally facilitating lethal missions. Multiple members of parliament requested clarification from the U.S. Secretary of Defense. Meanwhile, in the United States, the official stance remained firm. In May 2013, President Barack Obama stated during a keynote national security speech at the National Defense University, "Our actions are legal. We were attacked on September 11th and are at war with al-Qaeda. Strikes are conducted against targets who pose a continuing and imminent threat." The U.S. maintained that civilian casualties were rare and that strict protocols were followed. However, independent studies from Bureau of Investigative Journalism, The Intercept, and Air Wars estimated that between 372 and 1,047 civilians were killed in drone strikes between 2004 and 2013 in Pakistan alone, far higher than official U.S. figures. Bryant continued to push back. In an interview with The Guardian, he claimed, "The phrase near certainty became common, but we often could not be certain." In 2015, 3 former drone operators, Brandon Bryant, Michael Haas, and Kian Westmoreland, signed an open letter addressed to President Obama and published via The Guardian. They alleged that remote warfare was fueling resentment and aiding recruitment from militant groups. They claimed operators were encouraged to view targets in dehumanizing language, stating, "We killed people who were not dangerous." This letter was cited during a European legal challenge in 2016 when the family of a drone strike victim in Yemen filed a case in Germany against the federal government, alleging Ramstein's involvement. Bryant's testimony became evidence in the investigation conducted by the European Center for Constitutional and Human Rights, ECCHR. In the U.S., Bryant faced political and public backlash. Some military officials accused him of compromising operational integrity. He reported receiving online harassment and was labeled unpatriotic by some media commentators. Still, he persisted. Speaking to BBC, he summed up his stance. "I didn't come forward to attack the United States. I came forward because someone needed to speak for those who can't speak anymore." Amid growing concern, the U.S. government tightened strike protocols in 2016, shifting from CIA to Department of Defense coordination in some areas, increasing approval thresholds for targeted killings. But the technology continued evolving, faster, smarter, more autonomous. After stepping forward as a whistleblower, Brandon Bryant returned home to Montana, but he no longer felt connected to life outside the control station. The war zone was gone, yet it hadn't left him. He began experiencing severe insomnia, vivid nightmares, and episodes of panic. In a 2015 TEDx talk, he described waking up drenched in sweat after seeing thermal silhouettes in his dreams. "I don't see faces. I see body heat fading, like I did in the drone feed." At times, his pulse would race suddenly, as if he were waiting for strike clearance. Civilian noise, even the microwave humming, triggered deep anxiety. He said, "The worst part is that I was never physically there, but I can't come back from where I've been." Psychologists categorized his symptoms as post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and more specifically, moral injury, a term gaining wider use within military mental health. Unlike traditional PTSD caused by life-threatening situations, moral injury stems from actions that violate one's ethical beliefs. Bryant sought help through the Department of Veterans Affairs, who initially questioned whether drone operators were eligible for combat-related benefits because they weren't physically engaged in traditional warfare. He publicized this issue, stating, "I may have never fired a rifle, but my hand launched missiles that killed people." Does distance erase responsibility? Academic circles began examining the consequences of remote warfare. A 2013 study by the Armed Forces Health Surveillance Center recognized drone operators exhibited increased rates of depression and anxiety, comparable to those in direct combat roles. However, many operators reported their emotional struggles were downplayed, as they were expected to detach and perform. Bryant continued traveling internationally, speaking before lawmakers, human rights groups, universities, and panels on ethical warfare. But public speaking did not resolve his internal conflict. It often intensified it. He reflected during a 2018 documentary interview. People think drones are clean warfare, but every strike left a stain on my conscience. And the screens don't show that. His personal life suffered. Feelings of detachment made social interaction difficult. He spoke in interviews about losing relationships, struggling to maintain friendships, and feeling disconnected from family. He described sitting at dinner and suddenly remembering a strike scene, making it hard to continue eating. Meanwhile, the U.S. drone fleet was expanding. Predator drones were replaced by MQ-9 Reapers, capable of higher payloads and longer flight times. AI targeting assistance began integration trials around 2017 to 2018, making decision-making even faster. Bryant warned publicly that increased automation could further remove human reflection from lethal action. He visited former drone colleagues. Some had reassigned, others had left the service. Several privately admitted struggling with similar mental burdens, but feared consequences if they spoke publicly. In a BBC interview, Bryant gave one of his most quoted statements. "I think people imagine me as a gamer pushing buttons. But I watched people die, and I carry them with me every night." Not everyone viewed him as courageous. Some former officials criticized him for speaking against U.S. military practice. He acknowledged this, saying, "If telling the truth makes me a traitor, then I've been in the wrong war all along." By 2019, Brandon Bryant had transformed from a quiet sensor operator to one of the most prominent voices questioning the ethical reality of remote warfare. He continued to speak at universities, military ethics panels, and human rights forums. His story was cited in policy debates across Europe, particularly surrounding regulations on autonomous weapons and AI and targeting systems. In 2020, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial Killings referenced testimonies from former drone operators, including Bryant, when expressing concerns over the growing reliance on drone strikes outside active war zones. That year also marked a milestone. Flights using AI-based target recommendation systems began limited trials, initiating an era where a human operator might only confirm a decision already suggested by an algorithm. Bryant repeatedly warned against over-automation, stating in a 2021 interview, "Once machines start suggesting who to kill, human accountability fades. And without accountability, it's not warfare. It's execution." Meanwhile, U.S. drone policy underwent internal reform. Though most strike authority remained human-driven, the speed of kill chain decision-making accelerated, raising concern among analysts that emotional detachment could grow even further. Despite advocacy efforts, Bryant struggled with his personal recovery. In interviews between 2020 and 2023, he talked about seeking meaning through truth-telling. Some nights, he still woke up from dreams of thermal silhouettes. "They come as flashes," he revealed. Not the moment of death, but the moment the cursor rested over them. He supported legislation for better mental health care for remote warfare personnel and pushed for transparency in U.S. drone operations. His testimony helped expand VA mental health access to drone operators suffering combat-related psychological effects, a change gradually implemented after 2021. At the same time, drone warfare became global military standard. More than 100 countries now possess drone technology, according to a 2023 UN report. Several nations have begun exploring semi-autonomous strike capabilities. Analysts describe Bryant's story as prophetic, highlighting the inevitable clash between technological progress and human ethics. In 2024, documentary filmmaker Sonia Kennebeck's film, The Air We Breathe, revisited Bryant's experiences, examining how modern warfare affects drone crews. He reflected, "People still ask if I regret joining the program. I tell them I regret not questioning earlier." Today, Brandon Bryant lives quietly in Montana, occasionally appearing in conferences, still advocating for psychological support for veterans and ethical regulations for drone and AI warfare. He continues to remind audiences that remote combat does not spare the soul. In a closing statement during a public talk in 2024, he said, "We created a way to wage war without being there. But when I close my eyes, I'm still there. Every time. Maybe the cost of modern warfare isn't in dollars or technology. Maybe it's what it takes away from the people who operate it and the people who live beneath it." The story of Brandon Bryant is not a condemnation of technology, nor an anti-military message. It is a documented reminder that warfare changed when distance became digital, and that the greatest burden may rest not on the battlefield, but in the minds of those who never leave the screen.